Hi, my name is Ophi YouTube Videos. I am a feminist and a lesbian. I make conversational commentary videos about both of those things, and on my channel I like to talk about what I call the misogyny slop ecosystem. A content model here on YouTube and across other various social media platforms that rewards creators for jumping into conversations centered around hating some woman or another, and primes both the audience and the creators to be on the lookout for the next exciting hate train to jump on against a woman. Sometimes this takes the form of a coordinated and astroturfed smear campaign against a specific woman, often the victim of domestic abuse or sexual harassment, and sometimes it feels and appears like a more organic discussion. I'm always reminding people that things like this couldn't effectively be astroturfed if general audiences weren't already familiar with playing out these narratives. Often narratives about women being a mean girl or a bully, almost always about her being some sort of duplicitous liar. These narratives get increasingly entrenched when they're reinforced by our existing racial biases. It's not possible to have a conversation about the way the misogyny slop ecosystem impacts coverage of somebody like Meghan Markle, Megan Thee Stallion, or Jada Pinkett Smith without an understanding of the way misogynoir plays into our cultural understandings of these women, the reactions to them, and the roles that they get typecast to fill socially. And this, of course, applies to other forms of racism and bigotry as well. We've got about as many racist cultural tropes we wheel out and apply to people of color as we do people to apply them to. What I would like to do in today's video is a sort of case study of sorts. What I'm examining is less something that I think is being intentionally astroturfed and more something that I think is being bandwagoned. I want to talk about the cultural narratives we force famous women into and about what happens when you misuse the empathy you feel for a situation that plays out in the public eye. Today, I want to talk about Selena Gomez, Francia Raisa, kidney donations, wedding invitations, and parasocial beef. But before we do, I would love to thank the sponsor of today's video, Aura. Now, as we get further into this video and into discussing the misogyny slop du jour, you may find yourself thinking, well, thank God there aren't people on the internet who pore over every little aspect of my life and cause huge problems for me when I don't want them, and you may, unfortunately, be very sorely mistaken. While many of us will never have to deal with the sort of fan and audience scrutiny that the sort of women we so often end up talking about here on my channel do, just by right of being somebody active enough on the internet to have found this video at all, I feel safe assuming that you've probably had to hand over about as much of your data to participate in online life as I have. And even if you, like me, felt like you were doing a pretty good job of keeping your information off of the internet, there's probably a lot of that information floating around out there, and there are companies called data brokers that love to collate it. This is a redacted example of the sort of report a shady data broker website will sell about you. This is several pages of information, down to phone numbers, possible neighbors, possible jobs, possible relatives. Many, many possible relatives. Username, social media, pictures of you, automobiles, arrest warrants, debt. And all of this is not only dangerous and unsafe, but also extremely, incredibly unfair. The data broker websites who collate these little doxing brochures make enormous amounts of profit by doing so, even though their only real service is the violation of our privacy. The first time I found myself on a people search website like this because of somebody trying to use the information they got in pages just like this to startle me, I lost actual sleep worrying about whether or not I would be able to get my data taken down, whether or not it was just going to pop up on other websites I wouldn't be able to find by Googling myself. And the process to get my information removed was unnecessarily difficult. I had to make an entire account, effectively giving them more of my information just to get my information taken down, and then repeatedly check over the next 2 days to see if it was actually deleted. It was, because legally they do have to do that if they're asked to, but if I had to put that level of emotional investment into getting my name and address taken down from every people search website on the internet, I would never have time to do anything else. And that is where today's sponsor, Aura, comes in. Aura takes care of the heavy lifting for me, not only requesting for my information to be taken down off of these websites, but actually keeping an eye on it and making sure it stays off when the websites try to toss it back up a few months later. I love Aura. Aura has follow-up requests scheduled for people finder websites I had never even heard of and would never even think to check for myself on, and it makes me feel so much safer to know that they're keeping an eye out for me on the internet, because it's too big for me to keep an eye on by myself. There are a lot of services out there that offer something similar, but none of them offer as many features as Aura does for the same price. Aura is all-in-one digital security. I will get alerts if my personal information is found on the dark web, 24/7 monitoring to help keep my identity secure, real-time fraud alerts for credit and banking, a secure VPN, antivirus and password manager, and more, with US-based support available around the clock if something goes wrong, and up to $5 million in identity theft insurance protection. I've had nothing but positive experiences with Aura, not only in terms of them helping me to feel safer online and getting my name taken down from shady data brokers, but also as the first VPN I've ever used, and because their customer support was very kind to me and really helpful when I messaged them in the middle of the night with a genuinely silly question about my antivirus. When they say they're ready to help 24/7, they mean it. You can try Aura for free for 14 days at aura.com/ofidoki. In those 2 weeks, Aura will get to work scrubbing your personal information off of these data broker websites. I'm not leaving myself vulnerable, and you shouldn't either. Thank you so much to Aura for sponsoring this video and so many others on the channel. Let's get back to it. For the sake of anybody who may have missed the assortment of semi-viral posts that started to kick up about this either this past month or a few years ago, allow me to start closer to the beginning by introducing our main players here. Selena Gomez is a musician and actress, famous for her roles on Disney Channel and now in Only Murders in the Building. She also has a makeup company called Rare Beauty and has very publicly struggled with lupus, a condition she at one point needed a kidney donation to treat. And this is where Francia Raisa enters the picture for the sake of our story. Francia is more than just Selena's friend, or former friend, depending on who's telling you this, and she's more than just her kidney donor, though a majority of headlines and posts you see about her like to frame her only in this context. Francia is also an actress. She was unquestionably the best part of any Secret Life episode Jennifer Coolidge wasn't in, and she's more recently acted in How I Met Your Father. Francia donated a kidney to Selena Gomez, something Selena Gomez announced in an Instagram post in 2017 thanking her friend that reads, in part, "And finally, there aren't words to describe how I can possibly thank my beautiful friend Francia Raisa. She gave me the ultimate gift and sacrifice by donating her kidney to me. I am extremely blessed. I love you so much, sis."
My name is Francia Raisa, and I am so happy to be here tonight to help honor our Woman of the Year, who is a little sister to me, my beautiful friend, Selena Gomez. I mean, we've shared every high, every low, every success, and every failure together. Our Latina sisterhood has connected us professionally and personally. She is my biggest champion and my best cheerleader, and I hers. I mean, we are so close that we literally are the same kidney type, which, interestingly enough, came in handy recently.
To be honest, I think Francia should be getting this award because she saved my life. Sorry.
Francia has also spoken about the kidney donation. She did an interview with Self back in 2017 where she spoke about the process, and I've seen some of the things she said in this interview pulled out to try to justify some of the commentary people are giving on this situation. But I think that's a real disservice to her, to what she said, and to some of the later cues that we have gotten that this is perhaps not a situation Francia would like to constantly relitigate. One of the things that gets pulled from this interview that Francia did with Self is something she shared when asked what her story was with the kidney donation.
When I found out I was a match, it wasn't the way I expected. One day, I got a phone call from Selena, a FaceTime, and she's like, "We're a match!" And I'm like, yay! What? How do you know this? I had a way that I wanted to tell her when I made the decision. I knew it was gonna happen, I just knew at that time. Like, it's a big thing. So I hang up and I call my social worker and I'm angry. And she told me, it's gonna be hard.
Something I find crucial here is that for as much as people would like to congratulate themselves for reading between the lines, Francia does not say that she wishes she had known first because she was unsure. She specifically notes that she knew it was going to happen but had her own way of wanting to tell Selena, and she rightfully felt a bit disappointed by not having that opportunity given to her. And they're pulling that directly from the Self interview, but this story has been told other times too, with slightly more context.
I definitely remember you wanted it to be a surprise and somebody ruined it for you, so I'm sorry.
This is what happened. But you know what, I think it's a beautiful story still because, I volunteered, but you don't really know what you're getting yourself into. And it's scary. They make you take a 2-hour course to kind of educate you on what giving up a kidney means for your life. And so
it was just a scary process learning everything. And I remember telling the nurses, like, okay, I'm going to find out first. And the donors always find out first. And they said, yes. I said, great. How much time do I have to make a decision? And they said, as long as you want. I was like, I just want to pray about it. I just want to talk to my pastor about it. I just want to feel that peace. So that was like my thing. But I know that in the back of my mind, I would have been like, God, I need a sign. I need something. And so she called me and said, hey, we're a match. And I was like, why are you telling me this? But in my heart, immediately I felt God being like, this is the affirmation that you needed and you wanted from me. So then I knew I got even more peace that this was something I was supposed to do.
And for whatever it's worth, which I guess is not very much to the people who are very invested in blowing this whole thing up into more than it is, Francia has spoken about this sense of peace that she felt throughout in the very interview that people love to clip and cite and use to justify whatever claim they'd like to make on whichever side. They focus entirely on her story about Selena being the one to tell her, and not when she said this.
From the minute I said, of course I'll get tested, obviously it was like, you're my best friend, you're my sister. Of course. But I wasn't educated on kidney surgery. I felt a lot of peace throughout the whole thing, ironically. There were times that I did panic.
A lot of the Reddit investigators like to use this anecdote about how Francia found out as evidence that she was pressured into donating her kidney, which is a thing that is truly only conjecture. Francia has never said she felt pressured, and she has never said she regrets it. She's never even said she doubted the decision to do it.
No, but honestly, when I found out I was a match for Selena, I didn't think twice about it. I was honored, and if I was in the same situation, she wouldn't have thought twice about doing it for me. That's just who she is, and why I'm so proud to call you my sister, my friend.
People like to disregard that, though, because it's very exciting to be in a situation where you can make comments about HIPAA violations. Like, I agree that Francia was wronged in this situation. If she wanted to know before Selena knew, which she clearly did, the doctors should have ensured that that happened. But I also don't know what kind of confidentiality waivers Francia might have signed, and I think I know roughly about as much about kidney donation as most of the people who enjoy commentating on this situation do, which is not much. Even assuming the absolute worst here, assuming that the doctor's office prioritized Selena over Francia due to Selena being the more famous client and not due to some paperwork labyrinth many of us can go the rest of our lives without worrying about understanding, I do struggle to interpret a reading of this situation where Selena Gomez herself would be at fault for how it played out, or where this is a thing to be held against Selena. Selena wasn't the doctor there. She didn't violate HIPAA, if HIPAA was violated at all. I've seen a handful of comments on Reddit convey something to the effect of, well, even if they did tell Selena first, she should have kept it to herself and waited for Francia to tell her, and if Francia changed her mind, Selena should have just never said she even knew. And I think it betrays a stunning lack of empathy. Stay with me, because I know that those statements are being dressed up in their supposed empathy towards Francia, but they betray such an utter incuriosity about what the experience would be like to be dying of something, and then suddenly be told that the friend who offered to save your life is a viable option for your life to be saved. There can be nuance here. There can be two true things. Francia should have known first, and also it was not wrong for Selena Gomez to be excited to learn that her life had essentially just been saved, and you sound like a monster if you think that she was wrong for that. And also, if you're invested like I was invested, she still got to do her surprise and tell Selena the way that she wanted to. I thought it was sweet.
But I did have a surprise, and I made her pretend that she didn't know anything. I said, we're an actor, we're acting right now, this is a scene.
Very dramatic.
Yeah, very dramatic. So I was like, I'm walking in, I had a case that I had engraved. It looked like a Bible. And on top of it, I had a quote that she gave me when we first started becoming friends, and it says, a sister's a forever friend. So I had that engraved, and then inside I had a kidney bean in there, and that was my way of telling her, yeah, that we were a match.
Very happy.
At this point in the story, you might be wondering how all of this could possibly connect to the misogyny slop ecosystem. Might be thinking this is just a nice story about two women who see each other as sisters, and to that I say, honey, you got a big storm coming. Now, as we've already seen, Selena has publicly expressed her gratitude for Francia, including when Francia presented her with that Woman of the Year award. A lot of people like to act as though Selena has never expressed any gratitude toward Francia whatsoever, because it's what best serves the narrative they've been building around her, but that is patently untrue. We only even know about this because of Selena publicly expressing her gratitude. You don't get to just make up lies about a woman because it makes you feel better about hating her, and it is weird what a hot take that seems to be these days. In terms of the narrative being built around Selena Gomez, a lot of it stems from drama that was heavily clickbaited based on an excerpt from an interview quote where Selena referenced Taylor Swift. As with any time Taylor comes up, that got clipped out for maximum attention and was posted to the E! News Instagram so that they could farm attention from Selena fans as well as from Swifties. The post was quoting Selena Gomez, referring to Taylor Swift as her only friend in the industry, and Francia commented, and later deleted, a one-word comment under this post. Just the word interesting, and people noticed. Oh God, did they notice. Headlines were written, entire articles spawned out of Francia leaving one later deleted comment that was, at worst, a little bit messy. Let's talk about what didn't happen here. Francia did not ask anyone to harass Selena Gomez on her behalf. Francia did not post a 5-screenshot Notes app post about how hurt she was by this. Francia did not say, wow, even after I gave you a kidney. Francia didn't even actually say that she was hurt, right? She said the word interesting. While I understand the impulse to read genuinely hurt feelings into that word, I also can't say with any real certainty that it wasn't an attempt at a joke that people wildly misinterpreted. I don't know their dynamic. My personal interpretation of what that word would mean, and to be clear, I even think it would be fine if she commented the word interesting because she was hurt, doesn't matter here, because none of us actually know. We just know that she commented that one word and then deleted it. But people did bring this to Selena Gomez in a way that was entirely unasked for. They were saying the same sorts of things directly to her in her comment section across social media as they do in Reddit threads that dig up this drama now, 3 years later. They were telling her how terrible it was that she didn't mention Francia as one of her friends, how much more grateful she should be to have been given a kidney, how Francia saved her life and therefore must be her best friend, and how dare she mention Taylor Swift instead. And in the middle of this confrontation, we got another messy moment. Selena Gomez, backed into a corner about this, replied to a TikTok and said, sorry, I didn't mention everyone I know. And this is where a lot of people became aware of this situation. I can tell because if you look back at that post we started with about the kidney donation from back in 2017, even though the post is from 400 odd weeks ago, there are a wave of comments that are very critical of Selena, or who are being sarcastic about some perceived irony in the post, or who are there to scold her about how much more grateful she ought to be to Francia. I know I keep using the word messy, but it's the one that feels right for this particular situation. Casting aside my earlier note about how Francia might not have even actually been hurt and might have been trying to be funny, I do think it would be very human and very natural for Francia to fire off a quick, annoyed reply to something like that when it came across her feed. I think the nature of interview clips like this make it very easy for someone to be taken out of context. Like, in this case, it was originally just being taken out of context primarily to promote the friendship between Taylor and Selena, but keep it in mind. Think about how often this happens with some clip you're being asked to be angry at a celebrity, usually a woman, for saying, congrats on your little bump style. So I don't hold any actual resentment, side-eye, whatever you might call it, toward either Francia or Selena in this situation from 3 years ago. It does honestly feel a bit easier to mount a defense of Francia. It's easier to put myself in the shoes of commenting something messy like interesting without thinking of the way the person it was about might have legions of both fans and haters who would blow that up into a huge thing the way that it got blown up. It is not impossible, though, for me to imagine getting frustrated and overwhelmed and saying, sorry, I didn't list every person I know if I were in Selena's shoes. I think you have a very high opinion of yourself if you think you'd never say anything stupid. And to the original quote that was being taken out of context, if Selena was talking about musicians specifically when she said that she doesn't find herself running with a cool girl crowd other than Taylor, I think it does kind of make sense that Francia might not have come up in her mind as a friend in the industry. But again, nuance. Two things. Neither of these women necessarily have to be wrong. You think, again, it would make perfect sense to be a little bit sad or annoyed or hurt if you realized you didn't come up in somebody's mind and you would like to. I know it's going to be a hot take, but to be honest, I do think that what Selena said in that TikTok reply is one of those things that we can very easily point at from the outside and call it a shitty thing to say, but also it's something that I imagine would feel very reasonable to snap off when, again, she was being backed into a corner, being asked over and over again about something that nobody has any real context for other than what's been shared and the way that they have twisted it. And let's be clear, for as much as people are pulling out that one anecdote and pretending to have context, as much as people are reading things in and acting based on grievances they've convinced themselves are entirely justified, we do not know very much about the relationship between these two women. We know how they met while they were both young and working on their respective teen and children's shows. We know that Francia agreed to donate a kidney to Selena, that she was disappointed not to have been told first because she intended on surprising Selena with the news. We also know, as she has said repeatedly, and as people refuse to integrate into their understanding of the situation, that she did not think twice and does not regret it.
I was like, of course I'll get tested. And she didn't want me to do it. She goes, I can't. You have so much going on in your life right now, and there's a lot of downtime. And I felt a lot of peace about it, and there was like no question. I was like, I'm going to get tested. You're my sister, of course. And so I called her assistant and I said, give me the information. I want to do this.
And we also know, if we do like a lot of inferring and interpreting, that they seem to have potentially drifted apart in recent years. What we don't know is what actually precipitated that, or how heavily impacted that drifting apart might have been by having a peanut gallery of fans and haters who are more than happy to project whatever they can come up with and whatever feels most scandalous onto this relationship. The press and whatever podcasts Francia has appeared on have all been very eager to ask her about this alleged beef, some of which was further stoked when her father said in an interview that Francia was upset with Selena for allegedly drinking and smoking on the donated kidney. A lot of the things that he said have been picked up and ran with as fact, despite Francia's attempts at later disputing it, saying that she has no idea where he got that from because she hasn't spoken to him about this kidney donation since 2017.
Listen, I don't know who started that rumor that I got mad at you for drinking and smoking on my kidney, and that's why you ended up in rehab. And she goes, that's a rumor? I said, oh, girl, let me tell you about the last 6 years of my life. So I told her everything, and unfortunately, my dad also confirmed that story recently. And that, I'm going to have to say, like, I told Angelica Vale when I did her show, but my dad and I haven't spoken about that surgery since 2017. So I was a little frustrated that he had said that. I think he was just trying to, I don't know, protect me in some way. I don't know, but it's not true.
It's so much more compelling to believe what a man says than to listen to even the woman you claim you're defending, huh? So many of the comments on posts that appear across my various social media timelines about this so-called feud rely on that anecdote from the father. They tell it constantly, as if it's fact, that Selena and Francia got into a fight because of Selena Gomez's alleged substance abuse, and Francia's insistence that it's not how her kidney was meant to be treated. And this feels like such a nasty thing to invest yourself in so much when you divorce it from it being an interpersonal situation you're getting too invested in between two strangers who happen to be famous women, doesn't it? Like, did you maybe just need to hear somebody say all of this out loud? Because, yeah, this is weird. Certainly, there are like standards and suggestions for how to heal after something like an organ transplant, but I feel like there's a sneaky ableism in a lot of this discourse. The idea that somebody who was ill enough to need an organ transplant has no ability or right to struggle with substance abuse, no right to have more than one struggle, and also no autonomy to make their own mistakes, as they are now forever and permanently in the debt of the person who donated them the kidney. I want to mention not only how nasty that narrative is, but I also want to be clear that this is a narrative that has been constructed and projected onto Francia. It is not something she has ever said or suggested herself, and with the amount of research I've done about this in the last week, I'm sure I would have found it if she was ever more shady than that one comment that said interesting. But this idea that Francia has some sense of ownership over Selena Gomez because of the good deed she did is pervasive, and it creeps into the discourse around these two every single time they make their way back into the headlines. Headlines that Francia herself has said how exhausted she is by. In 2023, she attended an event for Selena Gomez's Rare Beauty and specifically said she didn't want any clickbait made out of her comments on their friendship, that any rocky times they've had in their relationship had nothing to do with the kidney donation. This is all important to me because it's so not the impression that you would get of Francia going solely off of the discourse about this. And it's important to be able to hold the nuance of criticizing what people are culturally projecting onto this without creating a villain where there isn't one. As I said, I've looked and looked for any evidence of Francia pushing that idea, or of her being remotely shady towards Selena Gomez, and I have found none. I have instead found a woman who seems very mature and well adjusted, and who seems to not be interested in litigating the specifics of what could be a friendship breakup, and what could be people spending less time in each other's lives as they get older. The most recent time that this has all been dug up was this October in 2025 because of Selena Gomez's recent wedding. It made headlines that Francia Raisa was not in attendance. Not because Francia said anything, though, just because people noticed that she wasn't among the 170 or so people reported to be at the wedding, and they decided to come and harass her about it. There are videos of her attempting to dodge questions by TMZ paparazzo about this, doing her absolute level best not to feed into the frenzy around this, while there's headline after headline, clickbait video after AI slop video, all feeding into this narrative that there's a big feud, that it was a snub for Francia to not be invited to the wedding, that it is evidence of Selena Gomez being evil and manipulative and having essentially stolen a kidney from Francia. And I really hate this narrative for so many reasons. I hate it not only for the ableism required to villainize somebody for wanting to survive and to frame that as if she stole an organ, but I also hate it for how much it robs Francia of her autonomy. Not only are we twisting something she did out of the kindness of her heart into something that we're meant to believe she thought entitled her to wedding invitations and special consideration in every major event in Selena Gomez's life for the rest of their lives, but we're also pretending like she's stupid and doing that in a way we think is defensive of her. We're pretending like she did not have the chance to change her mind about the organ donation, like she did not tell us that she spoke to her social worker after being told by Selena that she was a match. Like, she very much could not have been smart enough at 29 years old to make her own decisions, a decision she still seems to stand by even if her relationship with Selena Gomez is not currently wedding invitation close. And just the same way that none of us know more about the distance in their relationship over the last several years than we have been told, none of us know why or even if Francia was not invited to the wedding. We don't know. We just know that she wasn't there. None of us know the backstory here. People have posited that Francia had other events that same day. People have posited all sorts of things, and none of it really is provable to us. It's just really compelling to pick one and make one up. And I think we should ask ourselves a bit about why that narrative is so compelling. Because I've already gestured at a few of the low-key biases I think are making people get particularly invested in this. The misogyny, the ableism, but I think it would be a mistake to have this conversation without pointing out the way that racism has to play into this. I think that it's racist to assign some big fiery feud, some big manipulative blowout, and now being enemies to two Latina women who actually haven't done anything publicly other than support each other. I think it falls back on tired and overused narratives about Latina women, and it feels very uncomfortable to see that engaged in so uncritically. My light died, I'm sorry, but I'm on a roll. I think there's a real lack of respect for Francia's own words or own interpretation of the experience in favor of whatever is most salacious, and I think that there's probably a reason why we think that this alleged feud would be salacious or would make sense. I think a lot of misogyny slop ends up being people using women as dolls to play out narratives that we are familiar with and that we enjoy retreading or making up. And so much of this is made up. So much of this is an emotional discourse being carried by how people assume that they would feel in a situation that they have never lived through or had to live through. So much of this is what they think is empathy, leading them to take somebody's side in a fight, but that's not empathetic enough to actually respect what their side might be saying, or at the very least, not engaging in the sort of discourse online that leads people to harass the subjects of it in real life. And yes, sure, okay, the argument could be made that she might be hounded by paparazzo about this either way, but I just kind of struggle to believe that this sort of story would be such a big get for the clickbaiters of the world if we all kind of collectively agreed to take a step back and try to be a little bit less invested in this kind of thing when these narratives get presented to us. I know that that's much easier said than done. I know that I myself am making a video discussing this. I'm doing that because I know that these kinds of narratives are really interesting and compelling. It's part of human nature to be invested in drama that does not involve you, and we have celebrities primarily for the sake of projecting our own narratives and perceptions onto them, and a lot of people pretend like that's the same thing as support. Another reason why I think that this is a compelling conversation to so many people is because of the narrative of a friendship breakup being something people relate to a lot, but also don't see a lot of discussions about. I think it's something a lot of women, especially, are intimately familiar with. Like, there are so many women in my life who I've loved very intensely as friends and as sisters who I have grown apart from enough that not only would I not anticipate getting a wedding invitation, but I would feel strange about attending that wedding. I think the way Francia has spoken about the periods in her life where they've taken space from each other has been incredibly mature and has sounded very well adjusted. It does not sound like she hates Selena Gomez, and I imagine that she's very aware that if she would like to run around and have some very scandalous conversations about being mad not to have gotten a wedding invitation, several places would have been more than happy to interview her about that, including the TMZ assholes who seem to post up on her lawn. I think an additional complication for both Francia and Selena in this is the existence of fandoms and anti-fandoms. Like, Francia has spoken about how she's been harassed and bullied by fans of Selena Gomez, some of whom have said truly vile and violent things to her. She didn't blame Selena for this, though. In fact, she called out, even as she was saying how much she wanted the bullying to stop, that she knows that it isn't something Selena stands for. And I don't intend to blame Selena for it either, but I do think it's another side of the coin where Francia is being painted as though she has some sense of entitlement towards Selena. Because if you think about it, her fans are being fed and reinforced a narrative where there is some beef going on, and they're acting in a way that is not accordingly, but that they would feel is accordingly, trying, as many fandoms often do, to defend their preferred celebrity by tearing others down. And while this is extra shitty for Francia because of the discrepancy in sizes of their audiences and fanbase, it is the sort of thing that Selena herself has also faced. Selena Gomez has been the subject of many years of misogyny slop and constant and unfair criticism by fans of Justin Bieber or by people who just generally hate her and resented having to see her be famous when they were children and never got over their jealousy, which I think is another part of why a lot of this drama has so much legs. It would be naive to pretend as though part of the reason why the rumors, both of Selena having an alleged substance abuse issue on her donated kidney and of Francia being upset with her for it, have taken such root against Selena isn't due to the way that these fandoms and anti-fandoms function. Like, that's very obvious to me. And as with any woman I make a point of defending on my channel, and despite the fact that the people who want to be mad at me for feeling empathy toward a billionaire are going to feel that way either way, I do want to clarify. What I'm saying right now is not that there are no reasonable criticisms of Selena Gomez and that she's never done anything wrong. She's done plenty of things that are worthy of reasonable criticism, but I think a lot of the most vicious of the criticism against Selena Gomez is untrue, unfair, or both. And a lot of it, due to her positioning not just as a famous woman, but as a famous woman of color, is poisoned by misogyny, by racism, and by anti-fandom. And actually, for additional context on that front, I want to direct you to Ashley Norton's excellent video about Jelena. I will link it in the description below. You should watch. I just think, and I always will think, that it is important to consider what you're getting asked to be angry about when these sort of narratives pop up. Here, you are being asked to be angry with a kidney recipient for potentially no longer being friends with her donor, a thing you likely don't actually believe is a given when the situation is presented to you amongst donors who are strangers, which is often the case in terms of kidney donations. You're being asked to care about how a disabled woman treats her own body. You're being asked to believe that women cannot truly be friends with each other, cannot still support and care about each other, even if they're not actively best friends. And you're being asked to believe that two Latina women who have not actually feuded publicly are in the middle of some huge duel that you need to pick a side in. And to do so, you're being asked to disregard what Francia has actually said in favor of what somebody heard her father say. And you're also being asked to attach strings to an act that was done out of the kindness of somebody's heart. I think those are all things that are actually pretty noxious to internalize. I don't think that whatever existing dislike or irritation you have with Selena Gomez should be enough to justify being so disrespectful to the woman you think you're defending against her that you disregard her own narrative in favor of the one that is most exciting to you. In situations like this, I think you have an obligation, if you're going to publicly engage in this kind of discourse, to actually invest your own time and attention to figuring out whether or not there's any merit to the terrible things people will excitedly tell you about people who you do not know and will never know. I think there's this nasty little urge to feel like the empathy that you're feeling toward one party makes whatever actions you can dream up toward the other completely justifiable. I think we see that all over the place, and I think it's an urge that we need to do our best to resist. You do not have to pick sides, and in this situation, they have not even asked you to. You're not meaningfully empathizing with Francia here. You are over-identifying with whatever friendship breakup you take most personally and copy-pasting it onto a dynamic that you are not part of, and as a result, you are making her life actively worse by being so invested in this that people can effectively clickbait about it. Real empathy, actual empathy, might look like caring how she actually talks about this, or at least like thinking about how miserable you might be to be asked to constantly speak about an intimate relationship you had with somebody when you know that any little indication you give that things might not be rosy will result in weeks and weeks of clickbait headlines about you both. I think it's so unfair how little either of these women have fed into this. I think it's so unfair that even when Francia was trying to promote her limited edition salsa collaboration a few years back, so much of the airtime in her podcast appearances had to be devoted to debunking media-manufactured rumors about them. I'm gonna show you what she's actually said about the wedding and about the kidney donation, and I'd like you to compare that with the version of Francia Raisa you've been asked to invent in your head. What she's actually said is so different. And I think it's important to try to carry this lesson with us for the future the next time that we see two women being pitted against each other. The lesson being, we don't have to do this. We can stop doing this. We can stop falling for this every time, and we can start actually listening to what women tell us. So here's what Francia told us.
Se va a casar y estoy muy feliz por ella y pues mira, tiene vida y pues ya es billonaria y pues estoy agradecida que pude hacer eso por ella.
I know she's getting married, and I'm very happy for her. And look, she has a life, and she is already a billionaire, and I'm grateful that I could do that for her. We didn't catch the first question she was answering in this clip, but the next one is essentially asking her what her message would be to people who would like to donate an organ the way that she did.
Mira, desde el principio los doctores me dijeron, es una donación. Si vas a donar $1 a St. Jude o a otro lugar, no vas a llamar a decir, oye, ¿qué estás haciendo con mi dólar? Es una donación y es algo bonito que pude hacer. Estoy agradecida que estoy viva y poder decir que he salvado una vida. Yo creo que para las mujeres es un poco más difícil y los hombres, pues que ellos se enfrenten a donar, pues, porque para las mujeres yo creo, por mi experiencia, es un poco más difícil.
Look, from the beginning, the doctors told me it's a donation. If you're going to donate $1 to St. Jude or somewhere else, you're not going to call to say, hey, what are you doing with my dollar? It's a donation, and it's something nice that I was able to do. I am grateful that I am alive, and I can say that I have saved a life. I think for women it is a little more difficult, and for men, I can tell them to face to donate. Because for women, I think from my experience, it is a little more difficult. Then she's asked another question, and you can kind of, not to do body language analysis here, but you can see in her face that she doesn't like this, right? And I don't blame her because, again, this is something we have already seen her dispute. The next question is, and at a certain moment, you were a little not angry, but disgusted because you had made this sacrifice to her. And she was not taking things the way they had to be. And her response is,
bueno, ahorita lo que me estás preguntando son bromas que ha estado en el medio y hay demasiados rumores. Yo nunca he dicho nada. Justo cuando salió ese rumor de que yo me había enojado o algo así porque estaba fumando, yo ni sabía, me llamó TMZ, yo estaba trabajando, entonces lo que me estás preguntando son rumores, o sea, nadie sabe de lo que está pasando y ni ella y yo estamos hablando de eso y algún día a lo mejor sí.
well, right now what you are asking me is nonsense that has been in the media, and there are too many rumors. I've never said anything. When that rumor came out that I had gotten angry or something because she was smoking, I wasn't aware of those rumors. TMZ called me and I was working. So what you're asking me are rumors. No one knows what's going on, and neither she nor I are talking about it, and one day maybe we will address it. And since I know how people's brains work about things like this, I know that some of you heard her say maybe someday they'll address it, and you're like crossing your fingers for some big tell-all where she will confirm all of your priors about how terrible you think Selena Gomez is. And to that end, I want to direct you to a clip from a 2017 interview that these two women did, which is one of the only times that they've really spoken about this publicly.
Oh my God.
It's incredible
Wow.
to see these two in the relationship that they have. I mean, it feels like a sisterhood. And, I was just blown away to hear them talk. They're very private. I think they feel like they don't really want to ever talk about this again.
You're just going to be keeping your fingers crossed for a long time, it seems like. I don't get the impression that this is something that she wants to talk about or be primarily known for. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you again to Aura for sponsoring this video and so many others on the channel, and thank you so much to everybody who hung out with me on my research stream when I started digging into this. Thank you also to my lovely Patreon friends, a few whose names you can see on the screen right now. Patreon is a great way to help support me financially. You get a couple of extra videos over there every month, and we're having a book club style discussion of the New York Times article, Who is the Bad Art Friend, from a few years ago over there. We'd love to have you join if you'd like to join. Thank you also to my lovely YouTube channel members and to everybody who has supported me via super thanks, super chats, one-time donations on my coffee, or even just by hanging out and watching my videos all the way through to the end. I love you. I appreciate you. I'll see you soon.